Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to be introducing you to the reduce method in JavaScript. So what the reduce method does essentially, it actually returns just a single value. What it does is essentially you can call or invoke the reduce method on an array of values. You must pass in a callback function as an argument, and the callback function will have two parameters, okay? It will have the accumulator or the total and the item that we are iterating over. So what it can be used for is, let's imagine a fictional situation. We all love the movie Inception, where Leonardo DiCaprio goes in and says to Michael Caine, "Give me your best student." Or in the same way, tech giants will go into a university and try hire the candidates, perhaps with good personalities and resumes and portfolios, but also perhaps the highest grades as well. So what we want to do is we're going to create an array of grades. We'll put some numbers into it, and what we're going to do is we're going to check to see how many students got a particular grade or higher, okay? And we can use the reduce method to do that. So let's create an array. We'll say let grades be equal to, and I'll just put in some values. We'll do a 70, a 65, a 55, a 40, an 85, that's quite high, a 90, a 55, a 40, 45, 75, let's do a 66, and a 12. Someone went out the night before the exam and was hungover. They'll have to repeat in August, but they'll do quite well the next time. Okay. What we want to do is we want to find out how many people or candidates or students got a grade, okay, of 70% or higher. So we know we can check for that by saying greater than or equal to 70. Well, using the human eye, that's one student. They didn't get over 70, neither did they. 40, 85, yeah, that's 2. 90 is 3, and then 75 is 4. So 4 is not a lot. Let's add one more student at the end who did quite well. They got 73. So we can see here that 5 students got a grade of 70% or higher. But how could we write code to find this out? Well, what we could do is find the total number of students who met our criteria by using the reduce method. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call them hired students. These students will all get a job if they got a grade of greater than or equal to 70. So we just want to tell maybe Google or Amazon how many students in our class got the grades they were looking for. So what we can do is assign this the value of grades, the name of our array, and then using dot notation, access the inbuilt reduce method in JavaScript. It is a method, so it has parentheses. And what we need to do is we need to just pass in here a callback function, okay? Now the callback function is expecting to receive two parameters. Number one, when we're iterating over the elements of the array, we need to keep count of how many students have met our criteria. So we can call that total. Some people call it ACC for the accumulator, okay? And then of course we need to keep track of the item that we're iterating over in the array, and we will call that grade, okay? So we will call that grade. Then what we can do is have our condition, because remember, we're trying to see how many grades were greater than or equal to 70. And we know we can do that check with an if statement. So we'll say if grade is greater than or equal to 70, we're going to do something. We're going to enter the code block. And what we're going to do is we're going to increment the variable that we called total. And we know we can do that using the increment operator symbolized by plus plus. Now there's only one problem. We first of all need to actually return total, okay? So let's return the total. So if I come down here, I can say return total, that variable. But one key point you'll note is at nowhere here have we actually initialized total, that variable with a value. So what we can do is down here, just put a comma and put in 0, okay? And that is the last piece of data that we need to define, is what is the variable value for total. So we're just basically putting in a 0 here at the end to assign that a value of total. So now what we have is we have a variable. We've said let higher students be equal to. On our grades array, so the array name, you can invoke the method by using dot reduce. We pass in the basically two parameters to this callback function. So see here we have our callback function, and what we're doing is we're having our total to keep track of how many students met our criteria, and we're doing our check, and of course we're initializing the total variable with a value of 0 down here. So what happens is we pass in the accumulator, or the total, and grade. Grade is just a reference to each item in the array that we're iterating over, or in other words, the array that we're using the reduce method on. So what happens is, for each grade, the reduce method is iterating over each of these values, and it performs this check. So if the check is true, we're adding 1 to the total. So the first time the reduce method begins iterating, we get 70. Is 70 that grade greater than or equal to 70? That evaluates to true. So what we do is, using the increment operator, we're adding 1 to our total variable. So now total has a value of 1, okay? 65 does not meet our criteria. It's not greater than or equal to 70. Neither is 55 or 40. So therefore, we do not enter the curly braces, the if statement code block. We don't increment the total. 85 we do. 85 is greater than or equal to 70. So we use total plus plus. We use the increment operator to add 1 to our total. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Now total, the number of total students with a grade of greater than or equal to 70 is 2. 90, of course, meets our criteria. So again, that will be 3. Unfortunately, we have a batch of students who do not get a grade of, 70 or higher. So none of those basically meet our criteria. Therefore, we don't increment the total variable. And finally, our last student got 73. I said at the start there was 5 students. Have I missed one? 1, 2, I missed 75, apologies. Okay, so basically what it is there's actually 5 students who are going to meet our criteria. So if I now say refresh and go down to Google Chrome and refresh, well, I didn't log out to the console, my bad. So let's just log out hired students. Hired students. And now let's have a look, and we should see 5. And we get 5. So the great thing about the reduce method is you can iterate over an array of values and check to see how many, in this case, students got a grade of greater than or equal to 70. We could, of course, be more strict if we want. We could say, okay, we actually want to see how many got a grade of 75 or higher, and that's going to reduce now to just 2 students because only candidates with scores of 85 and 90 meet our criteria. And I noticed there I said the word reduce, no pun intended. So if I just refresh now, we see here we now get a score of 3. What the hell? Sorry, I forgot about you. 75 as well. Okay, awesome. So basically 3 people get a grade of 75 or higher. Maybe the economy slows down a bit, so they don't need to hire as many candidates. So we could actually change this now if one of the tech giants wanted to. We only want to hire candidates with a grade of 80% or higher. And if we refresh, and we see there, now we only get two candidates or 2 students who got a grade of 80% or higher. So that is the reduce method in JavaScript. The key point about the reduce method is it returns a single value. So we saw that here, for example, we're only now getting 2 students, so it's a single value. Basically with the reduce method, you must pass in a callback function, okay? So we see the callback function here, and basically what it's doing is it's doing our check for us. That callback function receives 2 parameters, or 2 arguments passed in, 2 parameters you need to define. The total, so we will always call that ACC, the accumulator, keeping track of how many you're adding to your total or your counter. And then of course you have the item in the array you're iterating over, and in this case we called it grade because it is an array of grades. And then lastly, of course, you must initialize your counter variable or your total or your accumulator with a value. So I just set 0 here at the end after the comma, and then what we did was we just essentially just logged out the returned result to us from the reduce method to the console. And in this case we get 2, but if we were to lower that back down to be, let's say, 70, then I believe we saw previously that we hire 5 candidates. 5 students got a grade of 70 or higher. Okay, and we see here a single value has been returned to us, just the number 5. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for your attention. That is the reduce method in JavaScript. I'll see you in the next tutorial.